I may or may not smell like my grill mixed with Mont Blanc Legend. So sorry about that.
As in, like, the Friends guy? the legend from Friends?
No, Mont Blanc.
You're thinking of Monty LeBlanc, is what you're...
Matthew
Matt
Perry,
LeBlanc. No,
Matt LeBlanc, Joey.
Yeah, that one.
So sorry if I smell like grill and
Joey from Friends.
And Joey from Friends.
I've been an artist for 15 years, and I think the stage fright is what moves me. I've got 2 bad knees, but I've got a real big heart.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of From the Middle. We are 3 middle-class guys living in the middle of America, in the middle chapters of our lives, with a point of view that's somewhere in the middle. I am one of your hosts, Dillon Hubble.
Kendall!
and Kory Hubble. What is happening with your voice right now? I feel like we just...
Did I go a little George Takei?
A little bit.
Yeah. I wasn't going for that, but as I heard it, it sounded a little George Takei. This is From the Middle, episode 9. Welcome, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us. How's everybody feeling?
Good.
Peachy.
Awesome. I am very excited to introduce, we do have our second guest on From the Middle here in episode 9, my good friend, Jeremy Kester. Jeremy, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Jeremy.
What's up, dude?
So Jeremy and I, although we haven't known each other a really long time, we go back, it's not that long, but we've worked at multiple companies together now. That's very exciting.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And we alluded to several weeks ago the idea, you might have listened to the episode Passion to Profession that we kind of highlighted some of Kory's background, and we alluded to the idea of discussing creative process. And this is now that episode. So the reason that Jeremy is here is because between him and Kory and Kendall, they're all incredibly talented, creative guys. And I'm going to be the kind of host and interviewer for this episode. I'm very excited. So I have zero creativity.
That's not true.
It's true. It's fine. Self-deprecation. Tina Fey built a whole career off of it. So
self-deprecation is a very fine art form that I'm just not very good at.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because I'm so great.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
That was funny.
That was a little self-defecating humor.
Not defecating.
Sorry. That's how quickly we went from George Takei intro. It just completely devolved in this beginning of this episode.
I may have just self-defecated.
So I have a long list of questions, and here's a little bit why I wanted to do this episode, because these 3 guys have tons of creative experience among all of them. I wouldn't necessarily say that any of them are, unfortunately, not at like the heads of massive companies as they should be, or chief creative officers somewhere, but tons of experience.
And thank you for reminding us.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I thought we should talk through that a little bit. So a little bit of background on all of them. I did a little digging, and much to their chagrin, I'm going to mention their backgrounds and some accomplishments. So we heard a little bit from Kory. So graphic designer, illustrator. You do some consulting, but you have you're sort of the creative team member in that consulting gig that you do.
Yep.
Kendall, marketing background, musician, incredible musician, written lots of music from what I gather. Mm-hmm. And Kory, by the way, you've done a lot of art for, you didn't mention it in that episode, but you've done a lot of art for very, very recognizable brands that you would see on commercials.
Sure.
Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Like Fortune 100 companies type stuff? Okay.
Yep.
And my friend Jeremy here, so photographer, you've at one point had a job title literally with creative in the name of the job title. Yeah. Photography, creative consulting, and you've spoken at you've been invited to speak at national photography seminars.
That's right, yeah.
All accurate all the way around. So just to establish a little bit of credibility that these guys at least know a little bit of what they're talking about, I think it would just be really interesting. I got a lot of questions written down. Feel free to kind of answer what you want and what you don't want. And at the end, we'll make sure to give you guys a chance to ask each other questions, because frankly, as the non-creative of the group of 4 of us, I'm not going to think of every good question that you could ask. So hopefully you guys by the end, if you sort of make any notes of things you want to cover, if I don't cover it, then please let me know and we'll jump to those questions. But if it's okay, I'll go ahead and get started.
Should we hear a little bit about Jeremy first, or is that baked into your questioning?
It's baked in, but do you want to tell a little bit
Yeah.
about yourself personally?
Kind of brief
Because
profile sort of thing.
two of us are just meeting you for the first time.
Exactly.
So
Which I'm very
Yeah.
excited about. I've been a big fan of the show since the beginning. Literally the second that the show comes out, I listen to it that week. And so it's so good.
it took us all a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, but really, I mean, I've really enjoyed the show, so I'm happy to be here. I know this is going to be a really cool and sustaining thing, so I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have questions for me, like on the brief profile front, or should I just kind
No.
of go over the Facebook
I'll say
bio?
it to start off with, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before recording. So you're sitting at home, and if you want a visual of who Jeremy is, picture a slightly cleaner cut Zach Galifianakis, and that's who we have sitting on the couch at the fourth microphone
Yeah.
right now.
Thank you all for having me. This is great. I've really enjoyed every minute of it. You've been very hospitable. It's been a really nice time. Ask me anything. I'll answer anything.
Can you answer all of the questions in that voice, please?
Yeah, it's done. My license expired just now.
I was going to say only if you toggle between Zach Galifianakis and maybe Aziz.
Oh, no. So that's a party trick, that one.
That's all you got.
Yeah.
Just Leo, no.
I like him already, Dillon.
Yeah,
Good
So
call.
Thanks, guys.
we were joking about, because Jeremy and I work together. He'll have moments where he's interacting with some of our colleagues, and I don't know. You probably realize you're doing a little bit of the Aziz. I'm sorry.
No, it's just a bit.
So much Parks and Rec that it just comes out.
Right.
And I'll just sort of look at him like a Jim looking at the camera from The Office moment. And I'm like, Aziz.
Yeah.
If you didn't know. So awesome. Well, I think that's good. And also, you do have, you're married and you have 4 young kids.
I do. I have 4 kids. Yeah, that's my wife and I have been married 14 years. Just straight out of the gate, I'll tell you, a very different. Each year's been different. We've had a long journey, but we're in a really great place. And 4 children, and several different kind of careers in that.
What's the age
creative and
range of
business.
your kiddos?
My oldest is 11, and my youngest is 7. And so we had 4 kids in 5 years, and that was a whole deal. She was pregnant literally all the time. I don't know what her deal was.
We'll have her on at some point then as well.
she'll-
And
no,
Kendall's
she's sleeping.
wife.
Find out how that happens. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've got questions. Like I said, feel free to. We're going to kind of do this round robin style. So for anyone that's listening, you're going to hear different people chime in. I'd like them all to answer, but I'm just going to throw the question out, and we'll kind of go from there. So first question for all of you. When did you or your family first realize your flair for kind of creativity?
This is kind of vague a little bit. I guess I can jump in there. This is an odd kind of existential thing, but really, I think it was my storytelling, and even at a young age, kind of my lying to some degree. As a creative, I know that sounds horrible, but as a creative, I would just tell these wild stories at times and try new things that were kind of odd. And I don't know that it manifested itself in the art space right away, but it became clear that this guy's brain is wired a little different.
I like that because I forget. I don't know if it was a child psychologist or a marriage and family counselor, but he was saying when your kid comes to you and you know they're lying and they say, "Daddy, there's a giant squid in the backyard attacking our house," don't diminish that and be like, "You're an idiot." Say, "Oh, really? What is he doing? What does he look like?" Like, you can kind of honor the story and run with it. Eventually get to the point maybe where you say, "Okay, buddy, do you know that that's not actually happening?" But it's kind of like don't poo-poo their imagination and creativity. So I love that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was lying for me, just lying. Yeah, no, I just wouldn't tell the truth. But I do love the story you just told as well.
So let him go with it. Just see where it goes.
No, yeah.
For me, my mom always tells a story that you mentioned the Burt Reynolds story where I drew a Burt Reynolds caricature, but way earlier than that, I think I was 5, 6, 7. She can correct me. But I was in the dentist's office, and we were in the waiting room, and she was always giving me scraps of paper to draw on. And she said, "You drew a circus elephant standing on one of those circus platforms, but you started with the platform and then the feet." And she's like, for some reason, when I saw you start with the feet and not what most people would do, like the eyes and the trunk and the ears, she's like, that signaled to me that you already saw the complete picture in your head and it almost didn't matter where you started. And she's like, for me, that was when I went, this kid might be an artist of some kind. So
I would say for me, it was probably somewhat later than that. I mean, we had so for music, we had a piano in the house and an organ in the house. That we got from our old church that I used to play on and dink around with. As far as songwriting, like I was putting stupid little things together at a very young age. But then, like when I got old enough to like do band and that kind of thing, like I played saxophone, and which I wanted to play saxophone specifically because you would see like Lisa Simpson and other saxophone players. They were always in my little nerd world. Like the saxophone player was like the cool one who could do his own thing, and so I did that from like day one of like concert bands and everything else. Like I was the one getting in trouble for not following music and such, yeah. And then I mean and I think probably because like I grew up with a piano and played with it a lot, like it was very easy for me to like pick up pop songs and things and just play them by ear. So like a party trick at like basketball games in the pep band, and somebody would just do like, hey, Kendall, play blah, blah, blah. And I would just play it.
What does do your own thing? Like what in your mind when you think of a saxophone player that can just do their own thing? What is that? What on earth is that?
And
free admission to theme parks, that sort of thing.
No.
Oh, you're a sax player? Step right in, sir.
So in my mind at that age, like so what I was really thinking of was sort of like a jazz band situation where you have music, but then you have these musicians who break out and they do ad-lib solos, right? And so like Lisa Simpson, right, is famous for doing that and getting kicked out of the concert band because she wanted to go off and just play what she wanted to play.
It's cool.
And so Lisa Simpson was my inspiration.
And like Kenny G. Then.
Yeah. So like Kenny G or Tim, what's his name?
We talked about him in
the guy from the Lost Boys. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget his name again. Tim or Tom. I'm sorry.
It's all good. We'll look it up. That might be a fun fact. Give Kory an excuse to sing later. So, all right. So with that said, what was your first big project? What was the first big thing that you creatively put together and worked on?
Well, toward the end of high school, was when a group of friends and I kind of started our own little band. This was like late 90s, early 2000s. Ska was a big thing. And so the fact that I played saxophone was good. I didn't really play any other instruments at that point in time other than that. But got involved with kind of some more formal songwriting and stuff that way. But then after that, I'd say probably I taught myself guitar freshman year of college. And sort of that first summer after that was when I had started writing music and putting words to it and doing sort of the full thing. So before that, during freshman year of college, I was part of another band at college, and I was a lyricist for that. So like creative writing has always been a big part of my life. And then eventually I decided to learn guitar and applied music theory, which I already knew because I had studied it, to guitar to the point that I could at least like chord out a song. And that's when I started sort of like writing the music and lyrics and everything all together and then bringing them to a band and we would put them together and play them. So that was 18, 19 years old.
So music theory, I have a follow-up question. When you say you could apply music theory to the layman, what does that mean? Because I would say a lot of people think, probably like I do, I write words first, I come up with a melody that would sound good. When you say apply music theory, something you had studied.
So music theory, so if anybody remembers back to like middle school music classes, and you remember like the plotting the notes on the staff.
Right.
That is like entry level music theory.
What's high level music theory?
High level music theory is like augmenting chords and learning how to put those kinds of things together.
Quantum melodies.
Quantum melodies, learning and memorizing circle of fifths and that kind of thing. So you can take a key and you can kind of know what the various chords are in that situation, and or if you want to augment or suspend or add to a chord, you can kind of know what it's going to sound like before you even do it, and know like what it means. Like if you see like a C add 9, like what is that?
Right.
What does that mean? And then how is that going to play along with the next chord in line? So putting that together. So it's sort of like all of that stuff and everything in between. All of that is just music theory.
Gotcha. I don't know that it was a big project, but I remember having sort of a seminal moment where one of the guys that was a few years ahead of me in Ada High School, Patrick O'Connell, was a caricature artist for Cedar Point is a theme park we have here in Ohio. It's up in Sandusky. And Cayman's Art Shops is the umbrella sort of company that the profile artists, so there's the serious profile sketches you can get at a theme park, or the caricatures. Anyway, he showed me the style. They have a sort of approach and a method to how you do those caricatures. And when we were in high school, I had a job working at Arby's or the movie theater or whatever. But I remember one weekend he said, "Hey, I've talked to the owners of Texas Roadhouse, and they will let us do caricatures for free, because you actually, I think, technically need a vendor's license in the state of Ohio to do something where you're accepting money for a service." He's like, "But we're sort of bypassing all of that just by drawing for free. So we're not charging anything, but people can give tips." And I approached the manager because the hostess appreciates when their people waiting in the waiting room aren't getting antsy that their table's still not ready. So we have an audience, the people in the waiting room. The restaurant has a challenge keeping those people happy, and we can come in and do something that gives them something to do while they're waiting on their table. So we would come out of there with $200 or $300 a night in high school. And I remember that was the first time where I ever went, I can take a ream of paper and a marker and just go earn a little bit of side money. And not many people have that ability to just, whatever the thing is, other than playing drums, 5-gallon buckets in New York City or something. Like, there's not many things you can go do with just a few supplies and go create some money. Mm-hmm. And that, I was in high school, and I was like, that is cool. So to me, that was a big project. It wasn't, something that got me a lot of notoriety, but it was Pat teaching me, like, we can go set up at a fair or a festival or a boardwalk on the beach and just go crank out some drawings of people's faces and make a couple $100 making fun of people. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow,
that's incredible.
That's kind of cool.
That's a really neat. That's an awesome.
Yeah,
it was. It's foundational for you. Huh? That probably takes some edge off of.
It does.
The fear of employment and things like that, where you go, yeah, I can just pop up anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, if you want some side money to buy something that's selfish that you want to buy, or if you were going to be exclusively a freelancer, if things were slow, you could just go off and do that. So, how about you, man? What was sort of your first big creative?
Yeah, that's a little bit hard to say for me. I guess if you helped me out with what big meant, I could probably get to it a little quicker. But I've been, a lot of my creative work has been kind of thought work around business and art, and that's mostly what I spoke on. I was never really the best artist in the room or the best photographer in the room. All my friends were better photographers than I was, but I tend to help them in the areas of like communication and business in photography. And people like my work. I'm not saying it's bad, but I never really felt like I was the best there. And so I think I've had defining moments. There was a product line that I created, that I designed. It was the first kind of holistic creation of something that I'd done other than my kids. But this was a lot more thoughtful. I had drawn up the plan and found the product list and everything. It's going to be hard to roll back from that, isn't it?
I'm thinking of time input, jokes, and
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe we'll save that for the end. But yeah, no, I designed this product and I had to go to the shops. It was one of the most fulfilling pieces of art. It's called HH Boogie. We sold the company a few years ago when we made a change, but it was products for the photography industry. And I worked with like 6 different craftsmen on one product. And I basically just said, what does a photo book look like? How do we deliver photos? What would be the best way? It was like fine art prints and designer cloth and a leather satchel and a wooden case. And it was just like this really well thought through, just even from the weight and the texture and the delivery of the things, how it was really rigid. And then it got smaller and softer and more delicate. And it was just like the first time I was like, I'm literally not creating anything new. I'm making a box, right? And so, but it was the first time I kind of realized that assembly is a thing, that not everyone has to be a farmer. You can be a chef and pull together good ingredients that other people have made. And that's art. I mean, up until that point, I'd kind of felt a bit fraudulent because I felt like as a photographer, I'm just capturing, if I photograph a beautiful building, the photographer gets credit, but the architect did the work, right? And so as a journalist, I felt like I was always just kind of taking something from someone else, and people love that and enjoy it. But I made that, and I thought, this is really special to me. So that was the first time I'd kind of gone all the way start to finish started from nothing and then to the acquisition and sale of the company. It felt like, wow, I did this thing. I was 30, you know what I mean? I was in my late 20s, 30s before that happened.
And isn't there something special about seeing like an actual not living, but an actual product
like
on
iterative.
a shelf that you had a hand in?
Yeah, and I would say I would take it even a step further in that case, that it was so unremarkable on the spec sheet. It was a box, it was a piece of cloth, it was whatever. But I could literally answer any question about it, anything. Why are the dovetails that way? Why did you choose this finish? Where did the products come from? I mean, imagine like the leather was made by 3rd generation equestrian leathersmiths, guys that were making, their grandfathers were making saddles for the war, and things like that. And it was just so cool. But then in the end, it was like, hey, I made this box for you,
Yeah,
so,
that's cool.
it was something to be proud of for me, but it kind of is, something only I and the people in my close circle understood really.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Kory, do you get like a huge, does it ever start to wear off, like that feeling of like you made something, or you made a logo for a school, and then like you see years down the road like kids walking around with a t-shirt that has something you drew on it?
Great question. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes you don't know the legs that your projects will have and the ripple effect of how far it gets out there. When I was freelancing for the Artifact Group, I mentioned that in episode 7, it was a studio approach, and you never knew if that toy or that game was ever going to even hit shelves. Right. Sometimes the projects would die on the vine, and I remember walking through Meijer one day and seeing the board game or the table game headbands, and I had done all the line work for it.
We have that,
and
we love that game.
I was with Sherry, and I was like, and you never found out. You never found out. Did that actually ever come to fruition? Yeah. And you would just do the next project, and I go, Sherry, I did all that art. Like I did, somebody sketched part of it, did a loose sketch, but I did all the final line work for the. And she's like, well, we got to buy one.
Yeah.
And so, and the same is true for logos. I had a Kenton High School up near where we're from in Hardin County. I just finished a big rebrand for them, and we did a brand new Wildcat is their mascot. We did a brand new Wildcat head. And they just built this beautiful $2 million indoor athletic facility it's like half of a football field, and then they've got a weight room and whatever. And the turf in there is all from the company that does the turf for the Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. And we were finishing the logo right as they were starting to click order to install the turf. And the athletic director said, we got to get the new logo in the middle of the turf.
Yeah.
And they did a groundbreaking. And so to see the thing that you sketched on your iPad, like 30 feet across in the middle of this AstroTurf in the middle of a $2 million athletic facility, it was just like, that was in my head, and then a very ugly sketch on my iPad, and now this is going to live for... So to answer your question, no. It's really fun to see.
Yeah.
And not from like a vain standpoint, because a lot of projects are very much co-creation, and it's people discussing, and they made choices along the way. So it's not like it's just me in a vacuum doing this, but to see where those things end up is really, really fun.
None of my stuff was ever really public. I did a little bit of commercial work, but mostly I worked with families and couples and weddings and that sort of thing.
Sure.
And it was just very much like I would forget. And then like 5 years later, I'd go in the home and there's a 4x6 sitting
Yeah.
there, you know? So mine was completely the other direction where there's just no chance that any sort of...
But a lot of heartstrings attached to
Yeah,
yours,
it's
right?
really
I mean,
cool.
these are huge moments in people's lives, so that'll live on for generations.
Pretty cool.
Awesome. So here's a question. Any ideas that you guys thought were great that your clients just did not like, or vice versa?
All of them. I don't know. There's great work and then there's paid work, right?
Or they just come to you and you're like, seriously, that's what you want? Like, that's all it is?
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring up. You got to decide, and they got to decide. Are we trying to win graphic design awards with this, or are we just trying to get it done? And sometimes the answer is the latter. They just need something done. And you don't want to then put way more thought equity into it than it's worth, because they might not want to pay that premium. There are levels. Some people start a business and just need a logo to slap on the side of their van and on their letterhead. Then there are people who start a company and say, I really want to differentiate myself and I really want to stand out, and this is very important to me, and I'm willing to pay top dollar because I recognize the value of brand. But the guy who just started his landscaping business, he just wants something. He doesn't care. And so it's important that you, as the one fulfilling that need, figure that out as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. Because if you're thinking one and they're thinking the other, you're going to butt heads the whole way through the creative process. But the sooner you can distill that out that, oh, you just want something? Cool. I can grab money. That's fine. Like, yeah. I'm fine just charging whatever to not put as much time and thought and energy into it. So that's a great point that Jeremy brings up, because there's great work and then there's just like there's paying work, and sometimes and if that's what they want, then great. You're meeting their need. They're getting what they need. Good.
That's a good way to say it. I have a super question for you that I've always wondered about. Not about you, I mean, but for the last 7 episodes, I've wondered about you. Which is on the music side of things. I think the fluidity of creating work over time. Not everything has to be award winning. You need to be continually creating and exploring. Mm-hmm. How does that work on music? I mean, I've played a little bit, tinkered around, but I don't understand as a musician. What's your level of, like, are musicians generally, are you generally disappointed when you don't make a groundbreaker, or do you feel like do you make stuff that's a body of work like that? That you know that people won't appreciate, to Dillon's point, like, you know, this is for me. Do you not release that stuff, or what does that look like?
Well, so I mean, now like none of it gets released. So there's a good handful of original worship songs that we sing for the church. I have learned with that specifically. So I kind of separated into 2 different worlds. There's the worship leading stuff, which has its own drive, its own purpose, and sort of it has its own set of responsibilities and things of that nature, which I take incredibly seriously, because I want to lead people well. And I keep my eyes focused on just what it is I want to lead them to, and so there's that. And so as far as that's concerned, it's very easy for me to write a song and try it, and it's a song that I would put together thoughtfully and tried to put truth and tried to put a good amount of a good theology in there, so that, like in previous episodes, we're not just singing yes Lord, over and over again. I'm trying to make it a rich song, and there's been many times where I've done that and then kind of waded it into a worship gathering with the church, and it's just apparent that it's not landing, or the direction that I was trying to accomplish wasn't taking place. And when that happens, I just pull it. It's gone.
Is that right?
It's done.
It's just done.
It's just done. It's over. And because like there's that sort of sense of responsibility that I have embraced there. like I'm perfectly okay with that, and I don't feel like emotionally attached to those songs in that way, because the goal isn't to get people to know these songs. The goal
Do you
is,
part it out later? Like, will you grab pieces
oh yeah,
of it?
no,
Yeah.
I'll borrow from it later. So there's Isaiah 40 is a fantastic example because it's sort of like my favorite go-to little area of scripture, and I've probably written 4 songs that came out of Isaiah 40, and they've all flopped so far. So yeah, so there's that. But then the other side of that is, so I have this other collection of songs where over the years I've written all kinds of other stuff too that's not worship, and that is stuff that I kind of I pour creatively into that as well, and that kind of thing. And those are songs where these days it's all just kind of for myself. I don't really have an outlet right now for it. But there was a stretch of my life where there was a bar called Victorian's Midnight Cafe. And I was sort of like the Wednesday night guy at the bar
that's cool.
on the stage. And then they did an open mic on Thursday that I also participated in. But a regular group of folks, and I would play my wheelhouse of songs that I had, and it would get to a point like one particular song or a couple songs I would notice that week after week after week with the regulars, like people that I didn't really know would start singing along.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is cool. But then when there were other ones that I would sing and just like notice that like no one really cared, or like everyone was really nice. And so like you can tell when you ask someone what they thought of this or that or the other thing, and they're just being nice to you. And so like those are situations where I would try to force it, or I would try to tweak it.
Yeah. Would you get the, oh, that's
whatever.
so good, when you get that one? Do you get
Yeah,
that
like-
too? Oh my gosh, that's so good. And you're
was-
like, this is trash. I'm throwing this away.
That was Aziz, by the way.
oh, was it? Did I just do
That
it?
was-
It's so good.
I'm really interested in that because I think I liken it to comedy, right? And it's very different, but work with the train of thought. If a comedian goes in and says, "I know this is funny," just because you don't, audience, that's your issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it's funny, so it's your problem and your palate that's the issue. Not this thing is actually funny. So with a worship song that you know is thoughtful and theologically sound, and if the palate of the average church consumer, because consumerism is running rampant in the American church right now, but you know this is like, what's the teeter-totter of like pushing it and going, I'll just wait till they get there, or I just got to react to what they're
tough.
giving me and just put it
Yeah.
away.
Well, that line, there's other things to consider there. So you're constantly walking that line of trying to teach and lead, but you're tempering that because
Right.
it's
Because you're trying to do high art. So, you can be as a
Right.
comedian or as an artist. In what you're doing, it's not as much that.
yeah.
Right.
So one thing with worship music that is unique from other types of music is that singability is
Right.
extraordinarily important.
Right.
And for anyone who's been familiar with stuff that I've written, I've gotten this comment before that like I'm not. I tend to be very wordy, in the writing, and part of that I think like comes from this whole psychological side of me that like has this great fear of being misunderstood, and I think that comes out in some of the creative writing stuff. That's
That's interesting.
I feel like I overstate sometimes in trying to write, and I don't want to cut things out.
I don't know what you're talking about at all.
Oh my goodness, you're like talking to artists right now.
Yeah.
This is literally our life.
But isn't so? But what's the line? But you're trying to answer, and I keep cutting you off.
No, you're fine.
What's the line though of going? I got to be true to me, the creator of this thing, and if that is the way that I tend to do things, so be it. And going, okay, I'll take that feedback, and I'll maybe adjust.
Yeah.
Like, what's the line? Because
Well, so if it musically isn't fitting along, and that sort of thing, that's where. So there's in churches, there's often this situation where there's always often there's this infighting, not so much at our church, but
Right.
infighting of music styles, and which goes far beyond even are we going to have a worship band
Right.
or are we going to have a organist.
Right.
And so it's something that as worship leaders, I think that the most flexible person in the room when it comes to things like that should be the worship leader. You should not expect the congregation to succumb to whatever your style is. You are there with your gifts and your talents in an effort to sort of like play your part, take on your role, take on your responsibility when it comes to a corporate worship gathering.
Right.
And so therefore, as the worship leader, I think it's your job to take into account what is this group of people like? What makes them
Right.
what makes them tick, and whatever that is, like try to play on that.
Right.
So I mean, it's like our church, for example, if we were trying to do the whole typical worship band wall of sound, we're trying to be Coldplay kind of worship band, which is
Right.
the vast majority of them. Like, I think that would probably intimidate some of the folks
Right.
in this church, and so
And they're not engaging as much because it's more of a show and a production than a call into a moment where I can be reflective.
right.
Yeah, that's really. I think that I would probably say that you would. That's a neat concept. That idea of accommodation in art. I mean, I think. I'm as I'm hearing you describe it, I'm thinking of it more of a spectrum of our job as artists is to find that sweet spot of pushing the creativity, pushing the enjoyment, but still accommodating the window of space that they're comfortable in. Because I think as a photographer, as a communication consultant, I'm wanting to push them in the right direction, what I believe is the right direction, but at the same time, I can't yank them there. There's got to be some sort of finding of where they are, and then just that slight bit of pull.
Sure.
The elasticity of that relationship is really important. I've never thought of it that way. Just hearing you describe it, I'm seeing a lot of similarities in my career, where it's like, you're right. Like, I'm not a worship leader, but boy, if I yank it too far.
Dylan's over there making a face like, I'm so glad I got these guys in a room.
This is why we're doing this.
Oh, okay. I
Absolutely.
thought it was like a move along thing. I
No,
was
no,
like,
no.
sorry, Mom.
Yeah,
I
I was having a hard time trying to read.
Oh
that
no,
too.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, this is great. Like, this is why I wanted.
Yeah.
We kind of architected this sort of whole episode or two that we wanted this to be this way. This is
that
great.
that skill is something that I think we probably all have had to develop and find. But I've never heard it defined that way, of just finding that sweet spot and pushing to the edge of that sweet spot.
I've typically, I mean, the adage is the customer is always right. That's not true.
Right.
But I think I can count on two fingers the amount of times where I've put my foot down and said, I
Right.
think you're making the wrong call here on a project that I was hired to do. Most of the time, I'm willing to make their desires work inside of what, because I still got to put my name on it at the end of the
Right,
day.
yeah.
And so there's a like, I want to own this and I want to consult you and I want to guide, but man, if you're convinced your logo should be brown, then okay, we'll do it.
Do you agree? I mean, there's a certain tenure that we have here in this group where the early consultation pre-work process seems to vet a lot of those issues out.
Yeah.
You know, as you're talking with a customer, if I was showing up for a wedding year one, I'm asking them what I should be doing. You know, a couple hundred weddings in, year 8, I'm looking at them and saying, hey, here's how I operate. Are you comfortable with that? You know, and I bet you guys are probably similar. It's a little different in the worship space, but I think in the art space, that's probably the case.
Yeah, I blundered my way through trying to articulate that in 7, but I think you start to learn where the mines are and where the pitfalls are. So the more quickly you can sort of get those out onto the table in an early conversation, almost no matter what I'm doing with my freelance career, I try to have a sit-down meeting if at all possible. Mm-hmm. I just think there's something to sitting down at a table over coffee, face to face, and sort of trying to work some of those things out as early as possible in a people skillsy sort of way.
Right. Yeah.
But you avoid so much down the road if you can sort of establish early and often. Here's what I think my expectations are. Here's what you're saying your expectations are, and where along that spectrum do you want me to play? Because if you just want me to do it, I'll just do it and not give you any pushback. Mm-hmm. But if you really want to go back and forth and sort of refine this and get it to a place where we're both proud, then that's a very different approach, and we're going to have different conversations along the way.
I at the tail end, the last 3 years of when I was photographing, I would say, hey, tell you what, let's meet for dinner. I'll pay. You pick your favorite place. It'll be a cool way for us to get to know each other.
Yeah.
And let's just see if you're a good fit for me and I'm a good fit for you. And we're going to leave friends either way. And I've done this a long time. And if I'm not a good fit, I'm going to have the perfect referral for you, I promise. I have some of the best photographers in the country that are friends of mine. And we would sit and we would chat. And someone would show up with their 3-ring binder that was 16 chapters deep, and I would immediately go, looks like this isn't going to be a good fit. Let's get some dinner and enjoy, because I would just show up. My job was just like the way I described it is I just show up and I'm a journalist and that's it. But it got to a point where we would just chat. How are you doing? And then I would call my friend up, Evan or Montana, and I'd say, hey, I've got someone here that wants you to shoot their wedding.
I could not agree with that more, and I think that's a much healthier way to do it, because you'll know right away this isn't a good match.
Yeah, and can we clarify, by the way, the customer is always right does not mean that you get 20% off at a retail store because you pick things off the wrong shelf because you looked at the wrong sale sign, Karen.
Yeah.
The customer is always right is talking about market demands and trends. So if Ford is saying we don't want to make electric cars, and then somebody says, but that seems to be what all of our market data tells us. Mm-hmm. It's referring to market trends. If customers en masse are demanding something or asking for something, the customer is always right. It doesn't mean you get a discount off your meal at Applebee's or 20% off your order at Kohl's.
Says the guy who worked in retail.
So I just want to put that out there. That
to be clear.
Please don't say to whoever you're talking to, the customer's always right in a one-on-one interaction, because in their head, they're just going, yeah, that's not what that means.
I'm 35 years old, and I've never heard that so well articulated. I did not know that the market demand thing is what that meant.
Yes.
I just thought it was bad advice.
No, it's referring to market demand. So keep that in mind. Please don't use that on your food service and retail workers. They deserve better, I promise.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about, as if we were building your resume at the beginning, what you'd put at the top, and I rattled off a few things about each of you. What are some of the greatest accomplishments that apply to your professional career, but things that you're more personally proud of? Not necessarily something that you'd have to put on a resume, but something that you're just very, very proud of that you've done.
Oh, boy.
I mean, it can be the same thing I mentioned already, but it doesn't have to be.
Pride was kind of my issue, so that's what...
We're getting there. Don't worry.
Yeah. Ugh.
I think when you hear... So I've had people approach me and ask me to do... projects that could be very challenging, not from an execution standpoint, but from honoring someone who has passed or something like that. And when you do those projects, and they, like, somebody just messaged me today and said, my kid is going to have, we just found out he has this rare disease. He's going to be fine, but he's going to have these treatments for the rest of his life. And I want you to draw him as a superhero, because it's like a rare bone disease, and he has to get these infusions. And it's like, I want to make him Wolverine, because Wolverine's bones are adamantium, like the strongest material. And I want you to draw a caricature of my son as Wolverine, and he'll wear that shirt every day that he goes and gets these treatments.
Wow.
And you're just like, man, when you hit that one out of the park, that could pay $50, and I don't care. Because if you make that kid feel special, or you've honored somebody's loved one who's passed, and they're thrilled with it, and it brings a tear to their eye, you're just like,
Yeah.
money be damned.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like that's worth everything. So I think when you're able to, that's tricky, right? Because you got to, and they're like, I'll pay anything. Just tell me a price. And you're like, how do I?
Yeah.
How do I do that? So when you can do that skillfully and tactfully and honor that ask, I think that to me is amazing.
Yeah, and I just want to say, real jerk move leading with that story, because I'm for those of you listening in, I'm sincerely glaring at him, because everything I've ever done in my life is a steaming pile of garbage compared to what he just said.
No.
That was just an incredible story, and I think we should wrap it up there. What a jerk!
This has been From the Middle.
Yeah, I gotta get, guys, I'm out of here. This is ridiculous.
What I meant to say was,
The one that paid the most monies.
I've
Yeah.
taken all kinds of pictures. Yeah, no, I haven't done anything like that.
Come on, you. How much stuff did you photograph? You never had any like
Weddings and
incredible shots
new
that people
babies
just were
and-
so excited.
Yeah, I think the value is with the end user for me. I've always struggled with, because my primary skill is storytelling and kind of like courage and trying new things. I've always had this kind of imposter complex about my work, because my I'm just kind of winging it with everything all the time. I happen to do photography for a long time, so there's some credibility there. But yeah, a lot of times I honestly, I think if I talked about just like human moments, HH Boogie that I talked about earlier, I was proud of myself for sticking with it. But it's tough. I never really thought that anything that I did, it sounds self-deprecating, but I mean it it is. I just never really saw any of my work as super incredible by itself. I think body of work is I guess I'm kind of proud of that, but that's a pass.
Yeah. Well, I thought of, and you might want to talk about this later, or it might not be for you, but I was thinking about, you were talking about consulting the outdoor company.
Yeah.
And sort of.
That's it.
Where
That's
you
the
help,
answer.
Where you help take them. Like,
Yeah, I'll take that.
When I was thinking about this, like, I was writing these questions kind of thinking of all of you. And Kendall, I didn't know enough about your background, but like, I knew a little more about you, Jeremy, to where that's kind of one I thought about, because that was about connecting.
Yeah. Yeah, you could have said that, and then I wouldn't have had to do it. I really like the show, and I like you guys. But man, this moment right now is testing me.
It's
You're
going to
doing-
get worse
you're doing-
before it gets better.
So
I promise.
I did some work that I called clarity and message consulting, and the idea was just helping people say what they were trying to say. And so instead of saying, "Hey, this is what you need to say," which is most marketing and those sort of design firms, I said, "Hey, let's tease out what you're trying to say," because I found a lot of entrepreneurs and people with vision for the future and artists struggled to explain. They always ended up saying, "I'm doing a good job" or something, but they weren't very clear. So I worked with a good number of small companies that I helped succeed financially. I helped my sister, who's brilliant. I was a small part of helping her get her salon open and communicating well. And there was a I would say those are the two things: helping my sister get her salon open, and then there was a shop that a place that does guided hunts, and they've profusely thanked me that I was instrumental in changing their situation, and their bookings went way up, and so they've been able to buy 100 more acres this year, which is pretty great. I actually am going to talk to them and say, "Hey, any other further work? I don't want money. I want acreage. I want 1 acre per job for the next 10 years." But yeah, thank you. No, that's I'm joking, but I think that's true. There's a little bit of legacy there. I think I'm pretty proud of that.
It's cool.
Awesome. So, how about, this is where it's going to get a little darker before it gets a little lighter. So, are there any negative byproducts of sort of your creative life or creative lifestyle, or any lows you've experienced because of it?
Oh, good. This is mine. I've got this one.
Go, man.
Yeah, I used my creative work early on to subsidize my my sinful heart, really. So a lot of creative work, one of the difficulties that you fall into is you are the brand. Your name, your personhood is the brand in most cases. And so building kind of glory in your own name is built into the business a little bit. So I don't think the art was the problem, but I used that travel and to really be not the man God wants me to be. And so God very, very kindly came after my heart, and I actually left the whole industry after that, and it's just been really a wonderful blessing. But that would be a difficult part of the creative process for me, was kind of what I talked about with being a kid, is when you're constantly formulating your own reality and your own space creatively. I didn't really rein it in, and it kind of got out of control life-wise.
But self promotion, especially if you're a sole proprietorship, is part of the game.
Right.
But so where for you did it? I mean, you don't have to go into extensive detail, but where did you feel like the balance skipped and tipped, and you went, "Oh, okay, now I'm making this more."
It was really self-glory at the expense of others, and so I think, my sister and I were talking about this years ago, after I came, what I call coming back home, because I was gone 2 or 3 weeks. I was speaking at conferences, photographing, and just away with 4 kids. It's just wild how my wife hung in there. But we spend everything's great now, everybody. So I wonder where that's going. And now I'm alone all the time, and it's good to be. No, I'm kidding. But my wife is a beautiful, wonderful gift from God, and our relationship is fantastic with my kids and everything. He's really resolved and restored a lot of that. But where it went wrong for me was the discrepancy of how the people who knew me and the people who superficially knew me, I was able to, it's a bit of the Matrix in a sense. I'm on stage, I'm the authority in the room, I'm teaching, I'm coaching, I've got all the answers. And I was able to build up this persona of this kind of celebrity type guy in a small industry,
Sure.
Like, if I owned a porta pot business, I could say I'm number one in that too, but in this small
Or
industry,
number two.
okay.
It was a softball. Sorry. You're being serious.
But
Sorry.
yeah, no, it's good. That was a good break. It got a little dark there. But yeah, but
Little self-defecating humor there.
Self-defecating. But the lives got so wildly different. And when I came home, I was one person, and when I was away, I was another. And so that for me, that probably could have been professional baseball, or it could have been literally anything. It was a heart issue, not an art issue. Ooh, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, that was an accident, but it was great.
Oh.
So I mean, that was, and then God finally consolidated all of that through a crushing couple weeks, and then a wonderful couple years. So, yeah,
I appreciate your authenticity. That's a very real thing. I've heard many people talk about that, professionals, celebrities, whatever, that on the road people are chanting their names, and then they get home and it's like, hey man, take out the trash. I don't care who you are. Like, you've still got an obligation to this family, and so you can very quickly create two identities, and that's profound.
the tact side of things is something that is odd to people now, but I have found that I was so fluid with the truth at the time, during that entire period of time, that now the best protection of that is just to be out with it.
Yeah.
And so I out myself a lot if I find myself getting kind of back into that. But God's really restored that part of my life. I've been able to photograph it. My best friend Harley that we work with through Providence was able to photograph his wedding because his photographer fell through. And I had retired and kind of I sold my company, and and so I was able to photograph his wedding, and now I'm photographing, like, I'm taking senior pictures with my phone at my family reunion and I'm just doing things that my friends and family that couldn't have afforded the service otherwise. I'm not saying you should do that. You should keep that's getting you back for the t-shirt.
Thanks,
thing.
man.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry that I looked at the timer there. It went a little long.
No, that's good.
So that was difficult. If that question was it difficult? That was difficult. All right.
Downside, I mean, other than just I'm really bad at procrastination. And the way I justify that is to say I do my best work under pressure. And so I'm going to force myself into the situation where I have to produce because I know I'm going to do better work. Or when a client says, have you ever done XYZ, or do you think you could? I always say yes. I'm not lying about have I done it, but like, do you think you could? And even if I've never done that specific niche thing, I go, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Because I believe that trial by fire is one of the best ways to learn. I did it today with my day job, something that I had never done before, that one of my colleagues just sort of threw me a curveball and said, can you do this thing last minute? And I was like, the client was about ready to get on the phone, and I said, sure, why not? And that was some of the best education and learning I could have had. So procrastination, I think, is a common theme with creatives.
Yeah.
Also just super overthinking. Oh, we've talked about this before, like overthinking and self-loathing, and nothing is ever done, and comparison, and identity crisis.
But it really is a lot of fun.
Yeah. But just all of those like sort of cliche creative things I would say are true for me. Grass is greener. These people are over here doing this way cooler thing. And a little bit of jack of all trades, master of none. I see something like stop motion animation, or I see motion graphics, and I go, maybe I should go off and just learn motion graphics and all this other stuff. And like, maybe I just stick to what I know and just be good at drawing.
Yeah.
So you can. I'm gonna go explore all these. There's so, especially now with social media, everything's in your face and all these interesting ideas, and you could pursue everything. Somebody wise once said, you can do anything in life that you want, but you can't do everything. Ooh. That's hard for me because I see this stuff and I go, I want to go try that. I want to go try that. I want to go try that. I want to go try. You can do anything in life you want, but you can't do everything. So those are just some things for me that I.
Yeah, I mean, I just to piggyback on that last point, like there's been a few moments where I've like broken down to my wife because it was just like, is like, man, I feel like I've got, like, my mind is just in so many different places and things that I want to do and accomplish that I just feel like I'm not doing any of them as well as I could be. And that's a bad feeling.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So maybe bipolarism is a part of the creative process.
Yeah, I think you kind of give yourself a little bit to those emotions. Like, the part of the artistry is to let yourself flow outside of the normal bounds of things.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it can just get way out of control, at least for me. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
like that's what you're describing.
Yeah, something like that. Outside of that, like, I don't know. Like, I certainly have, as we've kind of mentioned before, like, thought about the times where it was, like, evident that there was wasted time. As far as like, you put something together and then it goes nowhere and gets thrown away. But, like, I've come to grips with that and over the course of time and over personal development, over sort of like what my actual goals are and what they should be, and as God has built my character, and it has changed my point of view on a lot of things, and so, like, even that kind of thing I'm okay with, but I do still, like, there are still times when I feel like I'm trying to do, or I'm trying to create so much that I'm not able to give whatever time I have to all of it, and so therefore I feel like often all of it suffers.
We were having a conversation the other day, my wife and a friend, that just on that topic about knowing when to pause, knowing when to quit, knowing when to rest. It's just really hard for me. And as an artist, it's like you don't want to be a person who sticks with everything. Like, you want to know when to quit stuff and when to pause stuff, when to throw it away, and it's really hard. I mean, it's just like I probably it's hard not to juggle 50 plates at a time. Mm-hmm. You're so right on that.
So this has been so fascinating so far. I'm going to end with a little bit lighter question now, and we've got so much left. This is going to be our first 2-part episode. So if you're listening, hang in there, because we're going to break this up into 2 parts. But for my last question for right now, what are some funny stories, interesting stories about work, clients, travel, and we'll probably do a couple more on the next, because this is now going to be a 2-part episode. We'll do some more, but if you have some stories you want to share about any aspects of that, anything we've talked about so far, I'd love to hear it.
So I got a funny / interesting and cool one. So I said that sort of my dream job when I was deciding to go into art college, and then in art college, was to work for Pixar or one of the big studios. And we were very fortunate to be asked to visit the DreamWorks studio in Burbank with my consulting job. So we got to go in there and just talk to some of the more on the technical side, but then even like the lead character designer for DreamWorks, and we just got to just get a tour and be there and experience what it was like, and
Awesome.
it was almost like a 2-day research trip at DreamWorks. So for me, this was like Mecca. Like, I can die now, I'm good. And so we're getting this tour, and this girl has given us really cool stories with all these different aspects of the studio, which is this beautiful. It looks like an Italian villa in the middle of Burbank. They've got this fountain, this massive fountain in the middle, and you're like, what's with the fountain? They're like, we do that to sort of drown out some of the traffic noise so that you just get lost in the space. And you can't see, when you're in the studios, you can't see anything else. So there's like, you can't see any telephone poles. It's almost like Disney, how Disney does a great job of covering up all the non-Disney stuff. Mm-hmm. That's how the DreamWorks studio is. So every movie has its own floor. So How to Train Your Dragon has a floor, and Boss Baby was being made at the time, so that has a floor, and the whole floor becomes the environment that movie's going to be. Wow. So like when they're doing How to Train Your Dragon, they're like, well, we want to see how light plays off of different textures, so we're just going to build like the front half of a Viking ship, just so we know from a research perspective, if we apply different light to that or get that wood wet, like how will we animate that differently? And when they build it, it just sort of takes up the floor. And so now there's weaponry and Viking ships and cloth and
Sounds
fur
amazing.
and leather. Right. So that the whole floor becomes the movie, and then they wipe it all away and do the next one. So she's walking us down to where all the artists work, and it's very dark. They're like she's like, the artists like it dark in here, and there's every artist has decorated their little station. So there's like action figures and toys and lights, and she takes us over to this little quiet corner where there's a bookcase. And she goes, and this is where, when giving the tour, I normally tell people that it's really important to make sure that you're still reading and that the power of books. And she's like, I'm just kidding. Watch this. So she takes one of the books and tilts it back. No exaggeration. A secret compartment opens.
No.
And she's like, if you'll follow me, and you got to kind of crouch, and you walk in, and it is literally a speakeasy inside of the main working floor that this one guy, he found architectural drawings and blueprints of the studios and figured out that there was this weird sort of, the way that the roof pitched created like this weird little triangular space that didn't make sense to him. And he's like, I got to find this room. So when everybody left one day, he just busted through the wall and discovered this whole kind of like hallway triangular space. And so he would let one guy know here and one guy know there. And after work, they would just keep adding to this like rats, like just. So it got to the point where they had clawfoot chairs, a fireplace, a bar, multiple stools, a dartboard, all this stuff, and they would sort of secretly let more and more people know about it.
Yeah.
So the best part of the story was, so Jeffrey Katzenberg is a part of the three guys that started DreamWorks, because it's DreamWorks, SKG, Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen. So Katzenberg was friends with Barack Obama. This is during Obama's presidency. And so he sets up a private speaking engagement where Barack Obama is going to talk to the staff of DreamWorks, just them. And so the day before, a couple days before he was supposed to be there to speak, that little group of guys who had this speakeasy secret room went into their space, and on top of the mantle of this fake fireplace that they had in there, on White House stationery, was a note that said, "Cool room, the Secret Service." And
No way.
Wow.
And DreamWorks security had no idea that the Secret Service had even been there.
Yeah.
So somehow the president's Secret Service had discovered
That is so cool.
had discovered this little hidden room, and the staff the executives didn't even know it existed yet.
Yeah.
So then Katzenberg finds out that this one designer, this one lead artist, had created this room, and they fired him. And then all the other artists go like, no, we kind of need him. Like, this movie is like wrapping production, and we still need him. So they hired him back, and they're like, listen, you can have your little secret room, but like it's all liability is on you. Like, we can't claim any. So that was just one of the coolest stories that I had ever.
That's amazing.
That I had ever heard, that like the Secret Service had found this little nook that they had created for hanging out after.
What a terrifying moment. You know what I'm saying? Like, the second you pick it up, like the hairs on your arm are like, are they watching me now?
But the
Like,
fact
no
that
kidding.
that DreamWorks security had no idea they were there. Like, did they rappel on helicopters? What's going on?
Yeah. How
Unbelievable.
they got past us.
But for me to be able to be there, if we're going back to one of your earlier questions, like, for a guy who that was his dream job, like, granted, it's not in the way that I thought I would get to be there, but I had a moment where I had to step away from the tour, and I actually got emotional, because I was like,
Yeah.
to be asked to come in and do consulting with these guys, and then the pressure of drawing their characters on the wall, and like, anyways, that was a very fun and cool and interesting sort of story. So
That's awesome.
Man. I wish I had a fun, cool story. There was so at that bar I was talking about that I used to play. There was, I've always been known as and I've done various forms of like sound teching and things as well. And And I mean, for most situations, to get the most bang for your buck out of a dynamic microphone, you've got to be like on top of the thing, and like literally touching it. And so like my normal stance at a microphone is like my top lip is on it, and touching.
Yeah.
And there's a guy. His name was Crazy Pete.
Of course.
And he was the
Great.
guy.
My story had a Crazy Pete, and now I can't tell it.
Dang it.
Maybe I hope it's the same Crazy
Who worked
Pete.
for the Secret Service?
No, go on, lip mic guy.
But Crazy Pete was the guy at Vic's Cafe who he ran the anything music, anything that was going on that stage. He was in charge of it all, and like he was like legitimately crazy, pretty sure. And the dude was funny in some pretty awesome ways, but also in some sad ways. Like he was also like an alcoholic and things. But in any case, he used to get on my case for doing that, for like being that close to what he always called his microphone, because he was a musician too, and he would play and he would use it. And so like one time before one time just one of my normal nights I go up there and I just start singing and like my lips start burning.
No.
and then I'm like, this is weird, and then I recognized eventually, like while I'm singing, realizing the microphone has salt on it. He salted the microphone before.
It's me, Crazy Pete.
How
you doing, Hot Lips?
I have assaulted the microphone.
So that was
This is an Adam Sandler movie waiting to happen.
So I don't know, like that
Yeah.
that little story.
That's a good story.
That little story comes to mind.
Crazy Pete.
Yeah, that's a good
Crazy
one.
Pete.
I had a. You want me to tell one, or do you?
Go for it.
I'm sorry. I traveled a lot, and so it was inevitable that these things would happen. I had a trip in South Carolina, and I took my wife with me, and it was up in the mountains. This beautiful wedding up in the mountains, and I'm in this cabin, and I mean, it wasn't a cabin. It wasn't like a woodsy cabin. It was a full kind of motel on the mountain. And the first thing we do, we get in there. This is Jeremy's. What is it called? Rotten, incredible, terrible day. Yeah. So I get there, and immediately, first thing I notice is that comforter looks nice. That's a cockroach. So I go and I grab it. My wife and I, are from kind of sort of toward the center of civilization, so we don't see a lot of cockroaches inside. And so we go and I spend some time getting that cockroach, and there's others, and I get that one though because I want to take it to the front desk, and I feel like they should know. And so we go to the front desk, and I hold it out, and I'm doing that like incredulous thing, which that fake outrage that Dillon doesn't care for. It was kind of that. I'm like, excuse me, and I'm holding my hands out in front of me, and I go, this was in our room, and the lady says, oh, congratulations, you found a palmetto bug. And I went, no, that's a cockroach. And she said, nah, they're really common out here. That's a palmetto bug. You're going to see them all over. And I said, well, what's next? And she said, you get checked in. Like, she was not stressed about it at all. And we're on the mountain. There's nowhere else to go. And apparently they're everywhere. So I go to photograph the wedding, and I have a very expensive setup at this point. I have a Canon 5D Mark II or III or whatever, and all these lenses. I probably had close to $20,000 worth of gear between my hands and my bag. And I get up there, and I've got these nice dress shoes on, and I just haven't gone back to this place in a little while. So I get up on the mountain. I'm getting ready to photograph the wedding. We're a long ways from home, and I step. It's a little creek, no big deal. Just the water's just barely skimming on the rocks there. And as I go to jump, it wasn't the landing that was the problem. It was the launch, and it had this moss. I had dress shoes on, and there was like this moss right there. And I did a DreamWorks cartoon flip backwards. And so imagine with me, my feet are higher than my head, and I catch myself with my camera, smash, and then I land on my bag that's on my back, smash, and then I slide down this creek, which is well lubricated, and I slide about 8 feet down off of a ledge that's about 2 to 4 feet deep. There was enough of a drop that I felt it into a pool of water soaking my smashed gear. So I have just ruined $20,000 worth of gear. I'm at the wedding, and I'm supposed to be photographing them now, this second. This isn't funny to you guys yet, I'm realizing. So
No, this is tragic.
hilarious. So then I start going to guests. I'm soaking wet, by the way. I am completely soaking wet. The bride and the groom are about to see each other for this first time, and I'm in a pool of water. And so they're standing over there, and she's like, "Can I turn around?" I'm like, "Not yet," you know. And I'm in the water, and so I'm coming out, and one of the parents, against my wishes, had a Canon T6i whatever Rebel. It was very entry level.
Yeah. Sure.
Every
I have that camera.
it's a really great camera, is what I'm saying. It's incredible. A lot of
I'm not a photographer.
well,
It's a
if
point
you
and shoot.
If you take photos, you're a photographer. I'm a basketball player. LeBron James is a basketball player. But yes, there are levels. All right, so she has a Canon. I said, "Hey, I am confiscating this," and I took it and I photographed the rest of the wedding on a Canon with a variable focal length lens, and the photos turned out really great. But I was literally sweating through my mud on my clothes because I was so stressed because I had this incredibly great gear, and then I'm shooting this thing with this little camera.
Yeah.
Don't have a backup card. Don't have a backup battery.
Dude.
I'm photographing with my phone. I'm photographing with the camera, and it was incredible, incredibly terrifying. So my wife's on the phone with rental agencies. Hey, can we same day this? Can we pay somebody to drive right now to bring it out? But the closest place is 3 hours. So anyway, so I finish the night. I nail it. I get the photos uploaded, and I go, "This is incredible. I'm great." My wife and I go to some little restaurant bar. I sit down, and they said, "What do you want?" I said, I'll take a beverage. I've had a day. I'll take a beverage. So they bring me the beverage, and I'm drinking it. My wife's eating, and I'm just drinking my beverage. And I get to the bottom of the beverage, and there's just chewed up stuff in the bottom. Like, I'm talking about 1.25 inches of what looked like peanut shells with peanuts in them chewed up in the bottom of the cup. And this is the end of my day. So now I'm literally drinking this because I'm defeated. And I get to the bottom. You don't check your cup. Do you guys check your cup?
No.
No,
never.
you don't. So I get to the bottom, and you guys we'll have to use our imaginations here because the physical comedy of this is really incredible. So I get to the bottom of the cup, and I look at it, and I just look at it, and it's just floating in there. And I'm talking about enough that if you balled it up, it would be a couple corks from a wine bottle. That's how much of this brown wet sawdust teeth mark stuff was. So I'm looking down inside of it, and I'm just looking at it, and I haven't said anything. I've just exhaled for a while, and my wife says, "What's wrong?" And I just set it down, put my hands in my head. I'm still very dirty at this point.
Yeah.
And she looks and she goes, "Oh my gosh!" And she sets it aside, and the waitress takes it, and she goes, "I'll be right back." And she walks back, and the manager comes out, and I'm telling you, this guy was exactly restaurant manager. He was 32 years old, brunette, tucked in polo shirt, exactly what you expect for those of you listening. And he walks over, and he squats down and puts his arms on the table, and he looks me in the eye, and he goes, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And I said, "I'm not good, man. I'm not good." He goes, I want to shoot real straight with you."
Oh gosh.
He goes, "I don't know. I've looked at it for a while." He goes, we don't know what that was. And he goes, "I'd like to buy your meal." And I said, "I'm not hungry." So then we go back to the Palmetto Bug Inn, and we sleep, and I didn't care. I didn't care anymore. So anyway, go into art, kids. It's a really good career.
It's fun.
So that's one of those things. But boy, was it a whole deal.
I'm imagining them in the kitchen, and they've got about 6 people around your glass.
No question.
And they're going, "I don't know, Susan, what do you think it is?" "Well, Stacy pulled them off of the shelf. I have no idea. Wasn't Carl supposed to?"
Baby girl, I pulled it up on the Google. I'm thinking maybe that's some palmetto poo. I don't even know.
Who knows? Daggum. I've never seen it that thick before. It's like caked all over the bottom.
Here's the problem. We know what it is. Do we tell him?
That's
Guys,
that's where my mind is right.
Yeah.
He knew what it was,
Yeah.
and
Guys,
also
I
knew
have-
he couldn't tell you.
I have no less, and we won't go into them, but I have no less than 12 incredible food stories.
Which is why we
had a
have to
curse on my
continue.
life.
We have to make this our first ever
Guys, thanks for
two-part
this is great.
episode.
Thanks for
'cause-
having
Don't
me.
thank us yet. You're going to be around for another one. So this has been episode 9. Thank you guys so much for listening. Check out all our social media. Comment, like, share. Do all those things that you do that help us keep doing what we like to do. And we're definitely going to come back. Check out part 2, and we are excited to keep talking.
Real quick, do you have? How can people follow you if they don't stick around for part 2?
I'm going to be
we want
real
to make
honest.
sure.
I deleted everything.
Okay,
And
got
so,
it.
yeah.
Right on.
JeremyKester.com is still up, but I don't know if the links work. So
Yeah, you don't want to be followed.
Got it.
Got it.
say hi, but don't follow me. Weird.